right.
All right, we are back for another episode of we don't have a podcast name yet, so I'm just going to call this the Untitled Podcast
Yeah,
until Avita gets some juice and decides to give a name instead of knocking all of my names. So
I
we
didn't
are
know.
going
I'm like, I wonder if we should do a poll for people and be like, which
to
one would you
maybe
be most likely to watch?
I
Because I have
sent you like
a couple.
I sent you like 6 names this week.
I liked a few of them, and I was looking at
Okay,
others
okay.
today, but none of the ones that I was thinking of were as good, so that's why I haven't shared them.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. Well, we are back with another episode of the Untitled Podcast again, episode 2. Um, First and foremost, how's the week? How you doing? What have you learned this week?
Oh my goodness. Well, as you know, I spent a full day basically with Pace in our community yesterday, so
Mhm.
I have learned all kinds of things, like everything from social media stuff, wholesaling, yeah, just a bunch of little golden nuggets there. But yeah, just having a good week and pushing along, and yeah, trying to remain consistent. How about yourself?
Man, this week, well, so to for full transparency, so it is Wednesday. So thus far, the week it's been slow. It's been one of those weeks that I feel like I'm not as further along as I should. I feel like I'm missing something, but at the
Mm,
same time, got a lot of reading in the last couple days. So
nice.
I haven't done as much of that recently. So I'm trying to just do a better job of that. So been listening to a couple of the podcasts for future content. But overall, trucking along and excited to be here. Excited to talk about this as this is a cool one.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um, so let's get into it. So our topic for today is a podcast between Simon Sinek and Trevor Noah.
Mhm.
Simon Sinek, who's honestly in this generation is probably one of the most brilliant minds. He's an author. He's a speaker. I'm sure he's a businessman. He's a man of many traits. And then we have Trevor Noah, who I'm pretty sure everybody knows Trevor Noah personality. But he also just listening to some like his podcasts. He has some really good content as well, and he's
Yeah.
very intellectual.
Mm-hmm.
I thought he was just a comedian. I'm not gonna lie. I thought he was a comedian for like the first couple years. I found out about him, but
Yeah,
as of
I
as
thought
of,
that initially too, and then I
yeah,
I couldn't pinpoint for you where I saw him elsewhere, but I remember thinking like, oh my goodness, this guy is extremely smart, and like
yeah.
the things he was talking about were very intellectual, and I was like, did I miss something? Like, I had no idea.
No, no, we're definitely on the same wavelength there. So,
Yeah,
what they're talking about today is actually friendship, which I thought was such an interesting topic.
yeah,
So this is not even say a podcast. This is like they spoke at I'm guessing some kind of conference,
hmm,
and I sent this one to you a couple weeks ago, and we
yeah,
had briefly talked about it, and then once we started to do this, I was like, yeah, we got to talk about that one again.
yeah.
There's too many nuggets. So,
No, it's excellent.
um,
It's worth talking
what
about for sure.
yeah, what overall, what are your thoughts on this one?
I think it's good because it's just they're so pure in their thoughts, and I feel like it's something that everybody can relate to regardless of where you're at.
Yeah,
Like it can be as surface or higher level as you want it to be. Talking about something like friendship, it's like, I don't know, you can just gloss over it, but to their point, I'm like, we talk about building community and all these things, and it's like,
mhm.
what about just dialing that back and going like, well, what the heck is friendship anyways? And how do we
Yeah.
do that? You know?
No, it's such a good point because just personally, shoot, the last few months, especially like having moved across the country, brand new territory, got to
Yeah.
reestablish community, build friendships. So you feel like, man, it's tougher. I feel like it's tougher, as an adult, as a parent, than it was like earlier on, right? Because it's like
Absolutely.
you find your comfort zone, your comfort pocket. But
Yeah.
there's been a couple times I'm just like, man, I just miss my friends. I thought it was so crazy at first to kind of just say that, but I was just like, I kind
Yeah.
of just miss my friends.
Yeah. I feel like that's good to acknowledge though, because like you said, I feel like you tell kids or, younger people, you think of them like having friends or go make friends and all that stuff. But
Yeah.
like how many
Hmm.
times do you hear as an adult, like, if anything, I feel like it's borderline like frowned upon. Not
Yeah.
frowned upon, that's probably extreme, but I'm just thinking like, oh, you're hanging out with your friends too much. Or what, like it's like, oh, you're supposed to switch gears and now be working full time and doing all these other things that
Hmm.
like nobody as an adult tells you like, you should go make some friends, go hang out. Like,
And
no,
it and
it doesn't happen.
it's so critical because what happens is, I mean, we'll talk about this a little bit more in depth, but what happens is,
Yeah.
we find one or two people and we expect them to wear multiple hats for us in our lives,
Yeah.
right? They have to be a a someone you laugh with, someone you cry with, someone you can tell your secrets to. But at the same time, like sometimes like you need different people in your life for different situations. And
Absolutely.
we see that in what we do in our communities and
Hmm.
our networking. Like there's different people. Like for example, like just even doing this,
Yeah.
there's like you're the first person I thought of, right? So it's like you might have different friends for different things, but you were the person I was like, yep, she's the one to
Yeah.
do this with. So
It's like piecing the puzzle together for different
abs-
what are
absolutely.
you in need of over here, and that's okay if it's not the same person for everything.
And I think being okay with that is part of the maturation process. So
Absolutely.
I want to start off with a quote. They
Okay.
talk about passion is an output, not an input.
Oof.
So passion and purpose, like that's such a I feel like that's like been I feel like those have been like my two words of the year. Two additional words of the year is passion and purpose,
Yeah.
and trying to find the difference either between those two or like the connection between those two.
Mhm.
So when we talk about, everyone wants to find their purpose. So purpose we'll talk about at a different time. When we
Sure.
talk about passion, is passion an output or is it an input into something? I don't think we're
This
wrong either way, but I just want to get your thoughts on that.
I feel like before I dive into that though, I'm curious because now this kind of sparks in my mind where I'm like, how would you define passion versus purpose?
Good question. So just off the top of my head, passion is to me, purpose is gosh, how do I want to explain this? Purpose is what makes you. Purpose is like is all encompassing, right? So I feel like we work towards our purpose. Like we're on this earth for a purpose, and
Okay.
our goal is to live that out. So purpose is to me is the actions that we take in order to, create divine, can't even think of a term, fulfillment per se.
Yeah.
And for me, passion is the fuel for that. So I guess in this
Okay.
situation, I might be saying passion is more of an input versus the output.
Okay.
So curious to get your thoughts on it.
That's interesting. Yeah, I guess that's where I was kind of like, I'm not sure I've ever thought about those definitions to then think further about like, is this an input or an output? I
And
don't know.
that's me on the fly too. So I might need to give that one a little bit more thought.
I just
But
wanted you to feel the pressure every now and then, like I do.
yeah, it's okay. It's okay.
Keep you on your toes. No,
Okay.
I think passion is an output,
Okay.
right? Or I don't know if I'm thinking this through right, but I mean, I guess in the sense of I think passion comes from within, I guess.
Okay.
Where I'm like, you could share your passion with others, and potentially you are doing something or sharing something that I might feel mutually passionate about, but I feel like ultimately it has to come from within me to feel that. Like it's that same idea of like you can't live out someone else's dreams because they're passionate about it doesn't mean I have to be. Like I have to decide like what's going to fuel me, what drives me that like I'm just like, wow, in this moment I'm very passionate about this.
So is passion your inner fuel?
I think it can be.
Okay. Okay. I think maybe we'll come back to that quote. I think
Yeah.
maybe we'll come back to that. Maybe like a month down the road, we'll be like, hey, remember we talked about passion and purpose?
I think it'll
Actually, maybe something will click, right? So I think
I
that's the cool thing about this space is like I
yeah.
feel like there's so many moments that will just things will just start to click and be like, oh
Mhm.
yeah, we kind of talked about that.
Because once it's top of mind, suddenly it's like in the back of your mind where all of a sudden you'll notice something or hear something that will kind of go, okay,
Absolutely.
I see it now.
So let's get into it though. So let's get into some of the content that they shared on the pod. So here we go.
Perfect.
There's an entire industry to help us be better leaders. There's an entire industry to help us be better parents. There's an entire industry to help us eat better, exercise better, sleep better. And yet there's barely anything on how to be a friend. And if you think about all the mental health challenges that so many of us are facing today, whether it's coping with stress, depression, anxiety, addiction, even obsession with longevity, friendship is the ultimate biohack that literally fixes all those things.
You know, oh, juicy. All right, kicking it off. So, what is it about friendships that we are missing in our lives?
I don't know. I think we tend to put it on a back burner.
Hmm.
Like we were saying, we're like, and I know they get into it a little bit later, but like we are mentioning of, when you're a kid, it's like you go to school or you go wherever and it's like, okay, go make some friends. Or you're pushed to go meet people or try different things, or you get introduced to different hobbies and things like that. And I feel like the older we get, the more kind of it's easier to just get in your lane, or like you said earlier, like your comfort bubble,
Hmm.
and I think it's easy to go like, I'm too busy. I don't have time. Where do I meet friends? Who do I meet? Why do I need to meet them? I've got a family now, or I've got this or that, or, all these responsibilities. And so I don't know, to me, it kind of feels like it just ends up always taking a back seat, where it's like, it's just too many other things end up top of the list that you just don't even maybe even acknowledge that that should be a priority at some points.
So, which is interesting because that transitions to like my next question is like,
Hmm.
why is it that friendship is always what is sacrificed, right? So,
Interesting.
like why, like putting a name to that sacrifice. So, like, for
Yes.
example, like you'll be busy and it's like, huh, you know what? I'll call Vita back later,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like instead of like, hey, like I'll finish this work task a little bit later. Like it's like how I'll call this person. They'll understand,
Yeah.
or they'll be okay with it.
Dinner, you skip. Yep.
Yeah, like
Absolutely.
even so, you get busy with work, you skip out on dinner with your family. Oh,
Yeah.
they'll understand.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that, and this was what was so interesting to me is because I feel like if we start to switch that,
Mm-hmm.
like I feel like back to our previous pod, I feel like we'll be more closer to that fulfillment of happiness,
Yeah.
right? So by intentionally putting our people first in our lives, by intentionally, building and growing these friendships, and by intentionally not sacrificing your time, because think about it, we need. I mean, yes, we might need the revenue per se, to
Right.
for fulfill our needs, but like more than anything, like we need our social interactions more than anything, like
Yeah.
especially in today's society. So it's always interesting to me that that's the first thing that we put off when actually that should be the things that we prioritize the most.
Yeah. I think I have a few thoughts around this. And it's funny you said the happiness one, because I was actually leaning it more towards success.
Okay.
Like, what is driving you? And I think of like, as a society or how we're raised, like when I was saying priorities, I feel like people as a whole, we tend to grow up like, well, you need to, the older we get, well, you need to work. Like you said, like, oh, well, you got to pay bills. And so we're very, I think they said in this, but it's almost like that linear thinking of like, well, then it must be this way. Well, look, in order to achieve this, see, I have to work extra hours. I have to work this overtime, or, like that kind of thing. And so it's like, well, what's the success? Oh, well, people are too focused on these achievements. Oh, I have to make X amount. Or, well, once I get the promotion, then I'll
Hmm.
spend more time with the family. But how many people do you hear getting to retirement or close to it, or going through divorces or different things? And it's like, man, that's time I can't get back. So I feel like
So true.
looping that into your happiness thing, and I know we've discussed this, or like this is actually kind of where I'm at, is like I've hit a point where I've been working really hard to just be intentional. And I think for me, it's come down to going like, okay, how can I merge the two? What if
Hmm.
the people I was around, it didn't feel so much of a black and white choice?
Hmm.
I can either
Hmm.
work or I go hang out. Well, can we go to a networking event and then go to a dinner nearby? Or, can I meet family right after? Or that kind of, can I bring them into this and share what I'm doing, and bring them along? Like, I feel like finding ways to kind of let those mingle or different things, so that the amount of times you're really feeling like you're having to quote pick
Hmm.
starts to diminish. And I feel like your fulfillment and happiness goes up, because everything starts to be, you're around the right people, the right things you want to do, or not necessarily right, but you're around
it,
things that
it flows,
they're
things are
building you
flowing.
up. You're not having that
Hmm.
pull of like, well, I have to work or I
You feel
have to.
like you have separate lives, right? You feel like you have
Yes.
multiple
Yeah.
multiple identities or multiple hats.
Mm-hmm.
No, that's good. I really like that. That's really good. Let's move on to another part here.
Okay.
Florida to avoid paying taxes because they want to save time, and yet where else I want it to be the reverse. Like I want to like I'm not worried about like saving the money, to be in a place I don't want to live.
Right.
I want to live with the people I love, and if it costs more, and by the way, by cost, I mean that maybe I won't achieve that thing, or maybe I'll miss that deadline, or maybe I'll miss that quarter. It's a different kind of sacrifice. We think of sacrifice as always against people, but
Mm-hmm.
I can make a sacrifice for my career, for my friends, and it's about striking that right balance. Because your friends will be there for you, your work won't.
So good, and so true. So this is one of the things that when I heard this, I was like, this is where I feel like I'm at. Like
Hmm.
this is exactly like I feel like everything that I'm doing right now is to become the best version of me.
Yeah.
So, I took a role that's a little bit less than what I used to do,
Mm-hmm.
but it brings me more fulfillment because I'm able to have time with my family, and I have a little bit more autonomy, right?
Yeah.
And I'm able to build the work outside of my corporate job that I'm looking to do.
Yeah.
So I feel like this is the journey that I'm on to fulfill exactly what they're saying.
Yeah.
As far
Absolutely.
as friends will be there for you, your work won't be there for you. Like I've always valued myself on being a good friend,
Mm-hmm.
right? Being able to wear multiple hats, being able to check in, being able to like really be there for my friends. And I feel like I'm starting to see the fruits of those labors and like the adult friendships that I'm starting to have, or like the people that, the feedback that I'm starting to get now as an adult, as a friend. Like, so
Yeah.
I just feel like it's trending in the right direction. So I was really excited to kind of hear that piece because I feel like it was just like confirmation as far as like what I'm headed towards.
I think
How'd
that's
you,
excellent.
how'd you take it?
I think, yeah, I've done some version of maybe the same.
Mhm.
Um, I don't think for me though, I recognized it as like I'm going towards the friendships, but I guess the side of it of going, maybe if you replace that with just like family or the people you choose will be
Mm,
there. The jobs come and
mhm.
go. I think that's maybe
Yeah.
a little more accurate to what I've experienced,
Mhm.
and have decided to fully prioritize too. I've definitely had some experiences where places have closed on me or things like that, where I'm like, it, but when it happens, you're really just like, oh dang, like
Yeah.
you're done. Like I don't have a job,
Yeah.
and you're sitting
Yeah.
there it was, literally like one of those like, "You're great, numbers are great, everything's good, bye." Like we had no place, like it just like that. And so I think things like that, and I think paired, we've talked about it before too, but like COVID came up and things like that. I think it just
Mhm.
really pushed me to start thinking about like, what do I want to do? What do I want to explore? And if I'm not all in, what can I do to start prioritizing these other things? So for me, it was a little similar, but like for me, that meant like bartending and cutting back my hours to
Mhm.
go, I'm going to spend some time exploring this. Or if I don't know, I'm going to at minimum go spend some time with family. And to that point, I went, okay, how much do I need to live off of? How much do I need to work? I prioritized different things and made sure that I'm no longer missing those family birthdays or whatever, my little cousin's football games or things like that. Like now that's where we're at. I don't care what
Yeah.
people think. I'm like, I'm going, and when I'm here, I'm all in, and when
Mhm.
I'm there, like I'm doing my best to learn how to like kind of check out and just enjoy the moment.
It's funny you talk about the moment because I was told this some years ago,
Mm,
but I feel like it's so true. So we talk about friends will be there for you, your work won't. But it's
yeah.
funny that oftentimes the only time you see your friends are at weddings and funerals.
Mm,
When I say friends, I'm talking about like your general friends. Obviously, your best friends you're going to see more frequently, but your
yeah.
general friends who show up to your wedding when you have to pay $10,000 from them to eat, and then you don't see them again for 10, 12 years, right? Like, but
Yeah.
those friends, like, what it's very interesting though, because that is such a true statement. So like,
Hmm.
you only see them at weddings and funerals, and I have a close friend of mine who super close.
Yeah.
Both have little ones, but we haven't seen each other in years, and there's no excuse for that,
Mm.
right? Life gets busy, work gets busy. There's always some form of excuse, but like,
Yeah.
I took that upon me, like, yo, like we got to end this, right? Because what happens is our kids aren't going to know each other, and we've had these years to grow and expand together. We still talk pretty regularly, but we just haven't seen each other. Like, there's just
Yeah.
no excuse for that. So that's something that I definitely am pretty adamant about, as far as like being a friend and really truly being there for your friends. You know?
Yeah. I think that's excellent that you're aware of it and doing your best to change that,
Yeah.
before it gets a point of like, oh my God, has it been 20 years? Like
I mean,
I used
it's
to
been.
laugh when I was younger, or like, hearing
Yeah.
adults say stuff like that, or like, I remember you when you were a baby, and you're like, well, I'm like 30 now, like,
Yeah.
what are you
Well,
talking
because
about? And it
I
just,
mean,
blink and it's gone.
we joke about it though, but like, you can't choose your family, but
Mm,
you can choose your friends. And
true.
if you choose me to be in your life and I choose you to be in your life, then like I have high expectations for that.
Yeah,
I think I take that very seriously. So all right,
absolutely.
let's move over to, I think they're talking about addiction and community.
Mhm.
Let's see what they say here.
Which starts to give evidence that if we have close friendships and if we live in community, perhaps we're less susceptible to all addiction. And I know that there's a lot being talked about the addiction of social media, the addiction of cell phones, which is true.
Mm-hmm.
Which is true. It is a highly dopamine producing device, and that it's causing loneliness. And I would argue that if we worked on the friendships, and more important, if we taught our children how to be friends, that perhaps they are less likely to get addicted. And I think,
Yeah,
I think, so when you talk about what's the global responsibility,
yeah.
we're teaching people how to do everything. We're finding the hacks for everything. The one thing we aren't doing is the old-fashioned, hard, slow thing of making friends.
So okay. So good, so good. So
Mhm.
my question for you,
Okay.
Rita, we're gonna play a little game.
Uh-oh.
Yep. I specifically put it in the notes so it could read a little bit differently, so you wouldn't really know. All right,
Ooh, perfect.
I'm I'll go first.
Okay.
So we're going to share with each other what makes you a good friend. So I'm going to share with you what I think makes you a good friend, and
Okay.
then your turn. So I won't put you on the spot right away. I'll say that for like episode 5 or 6, and I'll just like
Right.
really just put you on the spot.
Then you're like, you had your practice. Here we go.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Okay. So
Get with that.
what makes Avita a good friend? For one, I think you're very dependable.
Mm.
So dependability, reliability, dependability. They say availability is your best ability. Very dependable. Um, you are genuinely a good listener, and I think that's very, very important. That you don't just talk to hear yourself talk, right? Like you respond, and then you're very thought provoking when you do respond. Um, so I kind of dependable. That kind of all falls into the bucket of like being very like loyal, right?
Mhm.
So I get a sense of loyalty.
Yeah.
I don't think you take yourself too seriously, in a good way, right? Like, and I think there's something to be said about that, to be able
Yeah.
to adapt and go with things. And so I see you as a someone who's always striving to learn and striving to
Mhm.
grow, and that's a huge characteristic that I have upon myself. So I lean towards that.
Yeah.
And then all in all, I think you're a chameleon. So I think you can adapt to the situation and environment. You might not know exactly what's going on or what to do, but you do a good job of adapting. So those are the 5 traits that I think make you a
Aw,
good friend.
thank you. That was really nice. I like
Of
the
course.
chameleon one. That's fun. I'm like,
Avi-
that's a good way to put it.
Investing with Evita the chameleon. That's
The
gonna be your
chameleon.
that's gonna be your tag.
Yes. Oh my gosh. thank you. Yeah, this isn't too bad of a surprise. I can live
That's
with
good.
it.
You got to give flowers. You got to give flowers sometimes.
I think, it's interesting because as we listen to this, I was thinking like, I truly think you are a good friend. And I mean that in the sense of like what they were talking about of like who you choose or what makes a good friend. And so I think, I mean, you can even hear it as we're discussing this stuff. Like, I think you are very intentional with your friendships and who you surround yourself with. And so I think that when you share things, you're very honest, in the sense that you're willing to be vulnerable and present and like to that point earlier, we're talking about, I guess people say sacrifices, but like you're willing to put people first and go, no, I'm going to text you. Or if I say I'm going to call you, I'm going to, or I'm going to check in on you. Hey, you seem a little down and I'm not here to bring you down further. What do we need to talk about? What's going on with you? Okay, how can we work on that? And so I think definitely like the honesty side is very true with you. I think that you're a good friend and that you try to lift people up. Like I know you have these big dreams of building your own community, and I think you'll be very successful at it because you're so good at hearing people, seeing where they're at, and then going, okay, let's go together. We're all going to figure this out. And so, yeah, I think those are kind of the qualities that I see in you it's very good. Like you're a really good friend.
Cool. Thank you. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Before we move on to the next topic, I
Fine.
got to ask you a question.
Okay.
Do you say I love you to your friends? Do you tell your friends I love you?
This was a good one because I'm definitely like the love ya.
You are the love
Like
you. Okay.
I
Okay.
catch it and I'm like, I don't know about that, And so when he was I don't know if we're playing that part or not, but yeah, I'm probably not.
It's
And
funny.
I think the first time I heard it, it made me aware, and so I've tried to get better at that. To the ones that are like real close to me, but yeah, it's not as easy as you would think.
Well, I
How about
mean,
you?
as a male, it's even harder, right? Male
Yeah,
guys don't say I love you,
right.
but the last probably 3 to 5 years, I've been very intentional with doing that. Like my
Really?
very, very close, yeah. Because the thing is, like, I'm at the age now. I'm not old, but I'm at the age now to where I've had a few people that I grew up with die.
Wow.
And so guys I graduated high school with, or went to school with growing up, like they passed away. So
Wow.
um, especially as we have these friendships that are further apart, I think it's important to make sure that, like, if you never talk to me again, you know exactly where I stood.
Yeah. So is
So
that something you started on your own based on those experiences? Or
yeah,
did you hear someone or something that kind of made you
no,
start doing that?
no,
Interesting.
I think it's just being comfortable and we're in your skin, and being
Yeah.
okay to say, guys can say I love you,
Yeah.
like, and being okay with that. And it just, after doing it for a couple times, it just became like the notion now. So now
Yeah.
it's like, yeah, I love you, like
I
you
think that's really
some
good.
and sometimes guys need to hear that too, right? I think we're, so much
Yeah.
machismo, and
They're so tough.
but yeah, no, you just need to hear, like, I love you, man. Like, you're like,
Yeah.
so
I think that's really special that you've learned that and implemented that into your life to like let those
thank you.
people know where they stand with you.
So starting today, there you
Mm.
go. Now you can start implementing it too.
I'm trying.
Let's talk about some fun. Let's talk about some boats. Let's talk about friends with boats.
Okay.
How I think about it. So I think a friendship, like I've tried to study friendships as much as I can, over the past, maybe, like, I've really focused on it over the past like 4 or 5 years. And I remember once I was in an interview and somebody said, "Hey, what's your goal? What's your dream?" It was actually Forbes magazine, and I said, I would love to be successful, but I wish there was a top 10 list for somebody who has a friend's net worth, because that's honestly what I'm trying to do. And maybe it's confirmation bias, but I find that answer, keeps coming back to me. I was on a trip to Greece a few years ago, and if you've ever been to any of these places where people are on boats and having a great time in the water, it hypnotizes you. And I
This is
turned
true.
to one of the Greek guys I was with and I said, "Nick, if I was trying to get a boat, what boat should I get?" And I'll never forget this. His friend jumped in and he said, "Ella, Ella, Ella, Trevor, Ella.
let me tell you something. The best boat is your friend's boat.
Yo, that's so true. I can't tell you. I almost bought a boat. I almost bought a boat myself
Did you?
about 5 years ago, and I'm so glad that I didn't, because I was at the phase where boats sounded cool. It's like you got to have a boat. But
Yeah.
yo, man, I am so thankful I didn't, especially trying to move and like that would have
Yeah.
been
Might have been more
horrible.
work than you were ready for.
Yeah, that would have been horrible. All right, so I'm gonna fast forward a little bit to
Okay.
let's go here. Friendships, and I think we're talking about. Let me see what this part is.
With 16 of my friends, that group has grown, and all I try to do in a like it is so meticulous, it is meaningful. My friends sometimes get irritated with me because they go like, why are you so controlled about it? And I go, because we have to work on our friendship. I know it seems like it's just going to happen, but we have to work on it. When are we having this dinner? When are we have a song that we sing which is called Are You Ready for the Question? And we sing it maybe like the fourth or fifth night of every hangout
In the
when we're on
restaurant,
trip.
you're at that table.
Yeah, we sing it. We sing it. Are you ready for the question? Are you ready for the question? And then we ask ourselves a question that we've been struggling with, because you realize sometimes you can even become a superhero to your own friend group, and then you stop releasing or letting go or digging in or scraping away. And you'll find your friend will be sitting next to you laughing and going through the worst depression they've ever been through in their lives, until you say, hey, is everything okay? What are you struggling with? And then they open up and you go, why didn't you tell me? They go, because I didn't want to burden you. I love you as my friend. And so that's what I try to do more than anything in the world. That's my greatest joy.
That's such a common.
Okay, so I wanted to talk about this because this has been on my heart now for a couple years now. So I've always been the planner friend. I've always been like, right. So what have I done? I planned family cruise. I planned
Oh my gosh.
after year one of college, we all went on a cruise. I planned so many trips. I've always been the planner.
Goodness.
And this phase of life is a little bit different. I just had deja vu for a moment, which is crazy.
Ooh. Weird.
But I told myself, so crazy, I literally had deja vu. Okay, let me snap back in.
That's okay. Moment.
I told myself I want to plan a group trip for the friends in my life at this time. And I want it to be an annual thing. Next year I'm doing it. That's I'm putting this on air. Like next year I'm going to do it, and you're coming too.
Yay.
But I want to do it.
Of friends until I met this community, so I'm like, sweet.
I want to do it around, and it doesn't need to be a ton of people. Like probably, maybe 10, 12 people. I don't know, something like that.
I don't feel like a big group is your style.
Nah, not really. But I want to do it.
That's what I mean. Like you're intentional. Like you're not just out there. I feel like you can get along with a lot of people, but you're very selective in like who you invest into.
For sure. But I want to do something very intentional. I want it to be. There's going to be like activities, themes. Like it's not just going to be like, hey, we're just hanging out at the beach all day. Like I want it to be about growth, right? Growth and development, but at the same time, sprinkle in some fun. So I had to highlight that part because I needed to tell myself and tell someone else, because when you tell someone else, then it's real, right? Yeah. So that is the goal for next year.
Oh, I love that. I think that'll be a blast.
So with that being said, my question for you is, what I wanted to talk about was superficial friends versus non-superficial friends. Would you say, so when I say superficial, so, hey, how's it going? We're good, hanging out, but we'll talk every now and then, kind of ghost. Would you say you have more superficial or non-superficial friends?
I think I'm at a point where I'm shifting.
Okay.
And I say that in the sense of, let me put it this way. Okay, so like growing up, I feel like I've always appeared to have a lot of friends. Why? Because I'm generally always talking to somebody. I, for the most part, can get along with people, or like you said, the chameleon in me. I'm like, I can talk to a little bit of everybody wherever I'm at, and kind of lean into that extrovert side. But I think when it comes down to it, I've never really had that many friends ever, like since I can remember. Like if you ask me, like to your point of not being superficial, of like, no, who's like a core group? There was a very, very short period of time where I probably could have said I had multiple. Yeah. And that shifted after high school. And I would say since then, like I've been more of, usually it's like, if I'm lucky, there's usually like one, maybe two, but usually like one person that I was always really close to. And that would just kind of come and go. And so I would say, though, at this point, with becoming more intentional of what I'm doing, where I'm going, who's around me, and showing up long enough to kind of start building these relationships, I do feel like I'm noticing a sense of, I think that there are a lot more that are shifting into something more than just being superficial.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah.
That's good. I mean, kind of like to his point, like we got to work at it,
Yeah.
right? So like these are things that we have to. Yeah, it definitely takes time.
Yeah. What about for you?
I would say I'm gonna pull this up as we get ready.
That's fine.
Non-superficial, probably a good 3 to 5 that are, I know, like for sure, like doesn't matter what time of day, like talk, call, visit, like come through whenever, like legit 3 to 5. And that's kind of how I've always operated, and that's exactly where I want to be. That's where I want to keep it.
Yeah.
You know, I feel like then I can be really, to your point, intentional about those relationships. So
yeah, no, that's good to hear.
Let's see.
Ooh, I like this one.
Trust by offering help. We build trust by asking for it.
And say that again.
We don't build trust by offering help. We build trust by asking for it.
I gotta rewind it one more time.
We don't build trust by offering help. We build trust by asking for it. And
say that again.
We don't build trust by offering help. We build trust by asking for it.
Man, talk to me. You said you like that part. Talk to me. Why is that?
Because I literally paused it earlier and I re-listened to it like multiple times. I don't know. It just stuck out to me.
But why does it though?
I'm not sure. Because I think it's when you look at things, I feel like it's easy to go like, you know, like right now we're talking about friendship and that's the focus. And it's easy to be like, well, I'm a good friend. Like, of course I would help them, or of course I would ever. But if you say, you know, how he was saying, like you could be at dinner laughing and somebody next to you is struggling inside. And it's like, you have no idea. So in your mind, you're a good friend. But what really is going to bring you closer is that person going, I need help. I'm struggling right now. And then you open up. And I feel like that's what allows you to bond, to offer help. It's not just that surface level of like, yeah, of course I'd help you. It's like, oh no, we're in some real stuff right now. How can we be there for each other?
I think the key to that is vulnerability.
Yes.
I feel like that's when trust comes. Think about it. Think about it like this. Like if you were watching, and I can't remember if this was in a book that I read or something, but if you're watching someone on live TV and they were, you know, cooking a pie or baking a pie.
Okay.
And that same someone, then someone else was baking a pie on live TV and they messed up. You'd probably lean towards the person who messed up, right? Because sometimes you feel like, oh, I can't meet that perfection. I can't meet that. I can't fit into this box. But this person, that's me. I mess up. I'm more geared towards that. So we always tend to lean to those. Think about we got an election right now. Who are people more leaning towards? Someone who they feel that are more, they relate, where the relatability is.
Yeah.
Who's more open, who's more vulnerable. Now, whatever side that is, that's up to you. But like vulnerability breeds trust. If you're more vulnerable with me, then I'm going to be more vulnerable with you. Hence, now we've already created that bond of trust.
Yeah.
That's what I took from that. Was like, that's why I try to be more open and more transparent versus, you know, younger self is like, I'm guarded. I'm always guarded. Right? Like, and there's something to be said about always being guarded. But now, in a day in social media to where like no one truly knows how anyone feels based on, you know, a picture or a snippet or video. Oh, they look happy. They look. They could be miserable. Like
want to.
Like people making all this money, they can still be miserable.
Yeah.
So I love that. I love that section. That's literally my favorite part of this episode.
Yeah, that was definitely one of my top quotes for sure.
Before we get to the last part, do women make better CEOs than men?
Of course. It was said right here.
They just said it. They just said it.
Who are we to argue with them? Yeah, but I think it's important how they got to that point. Yeah. And what lended to them saying, women could make better CEOs.
No, I actually am aligned on that one. I mean, I grew up with women. I grew up mom, sisters, grandma. Um, so, heavily influenced by like seeing women of like strength.
Mhm.
And just from a emotional intelligence standpoint, like I
Yeah.
completely agree. So, all right, we're gonna finish up with this portion down here. Let me see if I can find it. This one's a little bit longer, so we'll discuss it at the end.
Okay.
There we go.
I think it's a leadership problem.
I think it's something we all have to work on. And one other thing that I've realized in talking to people, just anecdotally, and then therapists who are really good studying in the space, is I think we shouldn't take for granted how much the abandoning or the ignoring of friendships has affected romantic relationships, because people have now shifted all of the expectation, all of the support, all of the the love that they got from a community of friends, and they've moved it on to one person. And a lot of I think there's a few studies that have actually shown even having a friend where you can talk shit about your partner too, which is healthy, by the way.
Yeah.
Actually improves your chances of staying with your partner.
Oof, I'm just, no, I'm having an insight here. This is, thank you for being the truffle pig and uncovering this magical little insight that the same thing is happening at work is happening in our relationships. So it used to be where we sort of had bowling leagues and we got our community from there. We got our sense of belief from church. Work was the place we made our living. We had barbecues with our neighbors. And over time, those things have disappeared. And now we demand of our work that you be the place of purpose. You be the place of community. You be the place of my social life. Now you be the place that matches my politics. We're putting all this pressure on work to fulfill every desire I have. And we're doing the exact same thing in our relationships, which is we seem to abandon those outside places, and we're asking of our partners to be everything all the time, always, which is an unreasonable and unfair standard to put on someone or be put on us.
I've never.
All right, what's your thoughts on that?
I think it's a great perspective because I don't think we look at it that way.
We don't.
I think we're quick to, what is it they say, like a lack mindset of like, work is just not enough, or it's not cutting it, or your partner is not enough, or they just don't get it, and all these things. And it's like, not to say sticking in any situationship that's not like situationship, any situation that's like not suited for you, that you should stay. But I do think it brings up an interesting point of kind of having that reflection of going, okay, what things are not being met? And is this appropriate for me to be expecting it from this area or person or whatnot? Like, is it fair for you to expect your partner to fulfill you for work and this and that and the other things? Maybe not. Do they still need to be loyal or be there for you or spend time? Okay, that's reasonable. But okay, are you just upset about how much you're making? Or okay, well then let's go find you a better job. Who can help you with that? Or, I think it's interesting how they put it though, of like, we've gotten away from that, of like, when they said like people used to go to church and they used to have the barbecue and the bowling league. Like, I think that's just, it's a good picture to paint of going, oh yeah, if now all we're doing is working or whatever that one thing is, yeah, I guess when you say it out loud, that's a bit unreasonable to expect everything from one place.
I mean, think about this. Think from like a society standpoint. Like, we've always been built on community, and within that community, everyone had different roles in order for the community to foster, to grow.
Yeah.
So you had your hunters, right? And you had, the people who stayed home and cleaned and took care of the kids. Like there's within the community, like everyone played a role.
Yeah.
Then what happened is, we developed, downtowns and urban city life to where like everyone kind of moved there. And now we're wearing multiple hats. Now we're trying to have that one person in our life, our significant other, most likely, fulfill everything. And that's a lot of stress. That's a lot of onus and burden upon those on that person. So think about, like, what if we had specific people in our lives who were good at specific things?
Yeah.
Hence, they'd be able to maximize the value of output that they're able to provide to us, right?
Yes.
Which, in a sense, makes us ultimately that much better. So I think that's so true, that like everything that they just said, and that's why we need friendships. That's why we need community, because everyone plays a different role, right? So like
Yeah.
one of my best friends, like something happens in sports, he's the first person I call,
Yeah.
right? Like, and that's
Your go-to.
some, yeah, and that's just what that's my comforting, and that's
Yeah.
what, right? But then, like if something's wrong with my kids, I'm not calling him, right? I'm calling my wife, right? That's the first person I'm
Hopefully.
gonna call, right? Right. So like, so it's very interesting. I think that like we do it intentionally. I'm sorry, unintentionally, but like
Yeah.
we do it without even realizing it. It's just so crazy to think about. So,
Absolutely.
um, okay. Overall, I really enjoyed this one. I mean, there's a reason why
Yeah.
we listened to it again. I really enjoyed this conversation. We'll probably do some more from both of these guys at some point.
Yeah. I'd
I think
agree.
they both have quote unquote brilliant minds, no pun intended, to the pod. So,
Yeah.
um,
I completely agree. I would listen to many more of their talks, whatever it is.
overall, anything you want to leave our audience with?
Mm, I think if nothing else, if this even just sparks you to think a little bit more on this topic, I think it's worth
Mhm.
it. Whether you
Okay.
just listen to us for a second or you listen to the actual podcast we're talking about or any little tidbit stands out, I think that's kind of why we're here and why we do this is just because we're like, hey, we really benefited from this and an alternate
Mhm.
way of thinking about things. And so I think, if nothing else, if this even just gives you any sort of like, I hadn't thought about that, whether
Mhm.
it's I'm gonna go call my friend now or who
That's what I
are
was
who
gonna ask
are, who
you.
are my friends, like,
What do
that's
you?
a good
Yeah.
point. I think
What
it's
is one or two takeaways? What is one of your two takeaways from this? What are you gonna do?
I think with this, I think that last part we talked about stood out to me the most. I think that would be the takeaway is me
Yep.
because I think that, like I said, I think I'm in transition of building friendships. I
Mhm.
I think I'm intentionally pouring into, people to be friends and to be a good friend or that kind of a thing. I'm open to that. So I think that's progressing in a way that I'm happy with at the moment. But I think that last part rings true to me right now. Because for me right now, I don't think it'd be a partner, but I do think it would be work. And I
Yeah.
think hearing that, I'm kind of going, ooh, yeah, you can't expect your role to be all of these things, even though they
All
might
the
kind of be
fancy.
my friends or whatnot. Like, I need to
Mhm.
realize it's okay if they're not all these things. They're not meant to be
Mhm.
right now, and
The separation is okay.
yeah, yeah, exactly. That it's not a bad thing, that it's like that can still be thriving and you can find those friendships or whatever you need elsewhere and build it up so that you're fulfilled with whatever you need. So I think that would be my takeaway and focus from this. How about for yourself?
I love it. I love it. First thing I'm gonna do is make sure I call one of my friends this week, tell them I love them, and then
Good.
second, I'm actually going to make a list of my core friends, and then how each of them play, what role each of them play. I think that will help me visually be able to kind of see what we just kind of talked about.
Awesome. I think that's a
Yeah.
great way to
So,
execute that. Very cool.
all right. Well, thank you all for listening, Vita. We will talk
Thank
soon.
you.
All
Awesome.
right. Bye.
Bye.